take responsibility for how I am in the relationship, instead of expecting, well, I'll speak about my relationship with Gary, because maybe that'll be helpful. So in my relationship with you, beloved, I knew what I wanted to do was take responsibility for all the things I was feeling and not try to change you. And that is huge. It's huge, because then I began to heal the parts of me. I'll give you an example of one. When I met Gary, I had felt a lot of jealousy all my life, especially when I was in a relationship with a man and there would be other women around. I would be concerned that if those women looked better, that my partner might be interested in them. That was a feeling of jealousy that I had.
Thank you.
And so I wasn't getting...
The better to hear you
Yes,
with, my
I
dear.
wasn't close enough to the microphone, but jealousy was such a huge thing, and I began to practice noticing when I felt that in my body. It was very powerful and painful. And when I would notice it, and I began to feel it, notice the thoughts that I would have as separate. You know, they were fear-based parts of my personality. They weren't. That isn't who I am. Because before I thought I'm jealous, but I have a right to be jealous, because I would believe the thoughts of those frightened parts. And so I began to, each time I would feel that, I would feel it, I would notice it, feel it, and then I would challenge it by not acting on it. Sometimes I would talk to Gary and say, you know, I have that feeling again, but I am not going to act on it. Sometimes I would just be with the pain of it, and realize that that's not really what's going on. That's what the frightened parts of my personality think are going on. Sometimes if I saw someone who I thought looked better than I did, I would go over and introduce myself and say hi and meet them, because not to let them know how I was feeling, but I wanted to change that in me, because I wasn't going to let that run me anymore. That's just one example, but I have changed so many parts of my personality that were based in fear in this relationship with Gary, because we talk about things, we work through things, and instead of blaming him or pushing him away, I have been challenging everything in me so that doesn't happen. You know, so I don't push him away, and I don't make myself wrong either. It's really exciting.
I always say to my husband, there is no we without me. In other words, you know, if I'm not right with myself and on my path and whole and complete, then we don't really have a shot at really being witness to each other's growth and devotion to one another. And it sort of sounds like what you're saying, that the partnership is really about being devoted to another's growth and witnessing each other while being responsible for our own experience of what our fear, what triggers our fear and keeps us from being in the field of love.
Yeah. I would say I'm devoted to my spiritual growth.
As well.
That's the most important thing. Because if I'm not devoted to my spiritual growth, in other words, completely committed, then I can't support my partner.
Right. I think what I was trying to say, certainly I'm agreeing with you totally.
Yeah.
But when you choose to be with someone every day, the reason that that they're there, the other is not random necessarily, but being devoted to them and their process is important, right? To partnership versus relationship where you're needing or wanting someone from the person.
The reason I said that, Maryanne, I know what you're talking about, because I can tell with your partner. It sounds like, you know, since I just met you today, but I just have this feeling of this deep spiritual partnership you have with your husband. And so what I meant is, sometimes people think when they're devoted to supporting someone else, actually they're devoted to trying to control them and change them,
Right.
instead of actually supporting them. And so really finding out that about themselves is really important.
Right, which is what a spiritual partnership is. You bring to the partnership a sense of self, Gary, if you want to speak to this, that's present and aware to the who they really are, if you want to say that. What do you want to say?
Spiritual partnership is partnership between equals for the purpose of spiritual growth. So that's why the partners are together, to grow spiritually. I to grow spiritually, and to support Linda in her spiritual growth. And growing spiritually is not an amorphous thing. It means freeing yourself with your own awareness and will of the confinements, the torments of your fear. of the frightened parts of your personality.
Mhm.
It's an everyday down in the dirt, getting your fingernails dirty in your own life, so that when you're angry or jealous or despairing or manic, you have the courage and the awareness to experience that in terms of physical sensations and the thoughts you're thinking, and to say to yourself with awareness, I'm in a frightened part of my personality, and what am I going to do about it? And making a different choice. That's a responsible choice. Spiritual partners help one another do that. Spiritual partnership is a relationship dynamic for multisensory humans, for humans who are evolving through growing spiritually. It was a much more sophisticated dynamic than was needed for five-sensory humans who were evolving by surviving. The idea of being together to assist one another in spiritual growth and to grow spiritually.
That's something definitely to move towards. And one of the things that I like to talk about is the invitation to become internally referenced versus being externally referenced. And you talk so much about that in your book. It's critical, it's imperative, it's a big invitation. Gary Zukav and Linda Francis are inviting you to take the journey with them. We're going to be back in just a minute.